Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sideline Night podcast. This is our preview show, and we're looking forward to Armagh's Round 2 National League clash with Tyrone on Saturday evening. Joining me to look forward to the game is Paddy Savage and Jim McCorry, two men that know all about the rivalry and are looking forward to a good contest on Saturday evening. So I suppose during the week, me and Paddy have already discussed how Armagh done against Monaghan in the opening round. Jim, what did you see from Armagh? Were we impressed with them? Obviously brilliant to get the win on the opening day, but what did you see that impressed you?
Well, obviously, probably one of the big differences, and a lot of people would have commented on it, was maybe the pace of the game that Armagh played. I mean, it's something that Kieran has always wanted. In 3 years I was there as well, to take the game to the opposition. People talked about the different styles that you see with the better teams, and probably if you look at the Dubs and you look at Kerry, that fast attacking players that they have and moving the ball at pace. Armagh certainly looked like there's a lot of hunger and a lot of pace in their game. So that was probably one of the big factors on it. There wasn't a big change in personnel. Obviously, it was similar players that were there, but good to see, Conor Mackin back in playing. Conor had a bad year. He had an injury May last year and lost his place. But it was nice to see him back, as he's a player with a lot of pace and a lot of potential. And obviously Morgie looked a lot more trim and a lot more like a South. He had more speed back. He still had the strength, but probably with less of the bulk that he had maybe at the start of last year. So that was good, but still a good attacking brand of football, and despite the comments that you hear, and I said this last year in one of the post-match interviews, about people's perception of Armagh, that are defensive side and they don't score a lot, and they sit back and all this end of it. You look at that game, there was a lot of scores in it, and last year and over the last few years, and I was there as well, Armagh were always in the top three teams for scoring and all across all the leagues. And defensively, points against was all fairly low. Probably the big Achilles heel was goals been scored and easy goals, and we seem to be an example of that, where I suppose Kieran, whichever Kieran you want to ask, wouldn't be happy with the goal that was leaked as well. So, but a lot more positives than there was negatives for me looking at that Armagh side, and I was excited to see the way they took the game to Monaghan. It was a good brand of football. Started off well and continued on that front foot.
I suppose, Jim, it was probably that middle section of the game. It started brilliantly, ended brilliantly, and it was maybe that middle section. They took their foot off the gas maybe a wee bit and let Monaghan back into it. As you say, plenty of positives, with plenty of learnings to come from it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's always better to analyse a game as much in a win as it is in a defeat. Obviously, it's the old adage that you would hear, but every team's going to come back at you no matter what. I mean, Armagh had a great start. You had the penalty, or it would have been a goal. It hadn't been a penalty at the start. Expecting the ball in, that was hit in by Rory, I think. But even look at it, Forker was driving in for a break ball that had it broke away from Jordy as well for a goal opportunity. So it was goal written all over that one at the start. Great start. Probably could have shot another goal with Soupy going through that as well, which probably would have killed it off. You go at a team like that and a lot of scores, and you see in so many games, unless you're totally dominant, a team will come back at some stage. And probably that would be the one disappointment, that maybe in that second period after the water break again, it was 1-5 to 0-2, 0-3 scored against them. That would probably be a disappointment for. So it's still manageable. 1-5 to 0-3. I mean, the goal was the main difference on it. It was 5-3 in a period, and you were still leading by 4-5 going in at half time. That'd be great, but unfortunately in this case, it pegged it back going in at the interval, which is something that probably was the more disappointing part for the amount of possession that they had. So if you look at their return for the amount of possession, and their productivity, that'll be disappointing maybe to an extent for them, for the amount of possessions that they had. But having said that, the bottom line was to come away with that game with the win for the first game. For all the different reasons, for us.
Paddy, I suppose moving on to this weekend, we talked about Monaghan, and obviously a Division 1 side for 7 years, I think it is now, in a row. Moving on to Tyrone, while they haven't been that Division 1 side for as long, I think they were down in Division 2 as recent as maybe 3 or 4 years ago. They're still, it's probably a bigger task this weekend than it was against Monaghan. Tyrone are one of the favourites for not only Ulster, but they're contenders for All Ireland in many people's eyes. So this is going to be a massive challenge for Armagh this weekend.
Yeah, I think this is a step up. Just being realistic. I mean, even if we take, say, the most recent form that we have, looking at the highlights of it, but it was very, very clear that Tyrone were well in that game. Only get beat by 2 points, and it was level when that man sent off. So if we say, well, Tyrone are about the same standard as Donegal. Tyrone are playing Donegal in the championship in a couple of weeks. You wouldn't be able to split them at the bookies. And we saw, unfortunately, though, look, every game's different. But there was certainly seemed that there was a gulf there between Armagh and Donegal last year, and I know that Armagh didn't do themselves justice, but it's a great position we're in, Sean. Because we could get a home game, and if we could get a win on Saturday, chances are 2 games, and we'd have secured our division 1 status, and no matter what happens, we'll still have those other opportunities. But it's a great opportunity. It's great. It's great to stay up in Division 1 and really see where we are against the very top teams in the country.
That's the big thing, isn't it? That's why we wanted to get to Division 1, to see where we actually are, to play the likes of Tyrone and Donegal and on a regular basis. And maybe in a different year, obviously, we'd have been playing the likes of Kerry and Dublin, but that's just not how it worked out. But Tyrone, Paddy, there's such a rivalry there, and we sort of spoke about a couple of weeks ago that with Monaghan, that Tyrone's Armagh's big rival. It wasn't really Monaghan unless the Monaghan game's coming up. But now the Tyrone game's coming up, it takes you back to them old games in the noughties where obviously both teams were at their peak. Both teams probably aren't at that level at the minute, but still the rivalry's still there, and you always want to beat Tyrone, don't you, every time you meet them?
Yeah, look, that was a rivalry which just forged in those great days, when both teams were going on to win their first All Ireland. You had so many battles. There were, you had that neighbouring element to it as well. But I think maybe before that, the Tyrone rivalry was maybe more in the north of the county. But obviously, the whole probably the whole of both counties became obsessed with each other. For that period, sort of 5-6 years. You just think back. There was two of the games that you maybe wouldn't think about as much are those first round matches back in 2002. There was that draw in Clones. And then Barry Duffy got the goal late on, and then it just seemed, there was year after year, and obviously the final 03, and then they both went out on the same day in 04 when they were maybe expecting to play each other later in the championship. 2005, the 3 games, it was epic. It really was. You can still that. The replay that if you remember 2005, we're lucky enough. We were very lucky, to be honest, to get that draw in the Ulster final. And then, it was all the sentence off, and we came from 5-6 points down, maybe I think 5 at least, and scored 6 or 7 points in a row to win the Ulster Championship. The 2005 game. Look, there's the semi-final, the free at the end, and you just. You remember these things, and I suppose my main reflection is probably at the time we didn't realise how lucky we were, to be living through that. And these things, they don't last forever. But look, we'll probably see a lot of it in the national press probably over the next 3 or 4 days. When they see Armagh and Tyrone playing each other again in Division 1, there'll be a lot of probably stories about just how compelling that rivalry was, how great those teams were, and just how manic some of those matches were, in terms of an intensity level that had probably never really been seen before. I think it's fair to say.
What do you think, Jim? What's your memories of the rivalry? Obviously, like as we said, it peaked in the noughties, but Armagh and Tyrone have always been rivals all down through the years.
Well, if you take every county around Armagh, everybody's rivals. I mean, Down was always a big rivalry for me. I mean, I'm living in it now, and I managed them for a period of time, and I managed clubs in it. But Armagh Down was always a great rivalry for me. But as was Armagh Tyrone as well when I was playing. Talking about now, and obviously the Monaghan factor as well. So as Paddy rightly says, South Armagh maybe a wee bit more towards the Monaghan rivalry. The Uri side, a wee bit more towards the Down, and the North Armagh, a wee bit more towards Tyrone. So you have rivals everywhere. And you look at it this year, you look at this mini Ulster Championship. It's not a Division 1 proper. It's a COVID Division 1, and it's a mini Ulster. And you take really two of those great rivals, Tyrone and Monaghan, are in our section. One of them has been beaten, and we're now going to take on the other one, who really, when you take it, that game on Sunday was put it in the context, it was the first match for new management in Tyrone, but it was also the first match for really new management in Armagh as well. When you take that, Kieran had brought in Kieran Donaghy and Kieran McCorry, so there was getting used to that and new style, new coaches talking to them. So it was admirable for both sides in both their games. That they'd taken on board after only 4 weeks of the team working together, whatever was done individually or in pods or whatever way it was worked. They had really 4 weeks working together. And as you put it in that context, new management, new coaches, the COVID situation, it was good opening games for both on it. My big concern on the Tyrone rivalry in this game coming up, in the Donegal game, Tyrone had 12 wides, Donegal had 5. You'd even scoring half of those, and Tyrone still staying with 5, or Donegal still staying with 5. You had a different outcome. I wouldn't expect, within a week, you can say, well, you get a lot done within a week, but I wouldn't expect that to be repeated, that you'd see as many wides. When they get scoring opportunities, Tyrone probably will do a lot of work this week to try and improving that end. But so Armagh can expect that. Expect as well with, like ourselves, and I heard in your preview show or your review show from the game, we were talking to Aaron, about how good the Armagh forward line is. And it is, it's excellent from midfield up. But you look at the forward line as well that Tyrone would have, and what's to come in. I know McShane will be ready this weekend, but you have young Canavan, who's a great footballer as well. You have Michael Liskey, you have McCorry. So they have good, strong forwards to come in as well. So there's a quality there. And the point that I said to you earlier about this sort of pace that Kieran's looking in the Armagh team, and you can see that, the subs that he brought in, Turbot, flying machine, when he gets moving on, McQuillan, ex-Oz player, flying machine as well. These are all fast players. Jason Duffy, Kelly, they're all pacey players who can take the game to Tyrone. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a completely different game, I believe. I think Tyrone will be a lot more up for the game. And you see this whole aspect, if you win 2, it's okay. It all depends on results. You could have 3 teams end up in 4. I think you look at the permutations. If everybody beats Monaghan and they beat each other, they all end up at 4. But it's nice to have 2 points in the bag. Tyrone will be coming hungry, looking to get those first 2 points, and they need those. And obviously Armagh have got those. I don't think there'll be any complacency will seep into the guys. And you did discuss as well this whole theory, probably maybe as a polite way of saying it, that Armagh can't do back-to-back games, or they can't keep consistency in games. Well, there was a fair degree of consistency in that game and in the previous season with Armagh on it. So we'll see how that outcome goes on Saturday.
I'm talking about the 2 attacks, Jim. I think you were obviously involved last year when they met in the McKenna Cup. The 2 sides met in the McKenna Cup. I think Tyrone won. It was 3-18 to 3-15 or something. It was unbelievable game for the middle of January 2020, before everything went mad with the world. But do you expect that sort of scoreline, Jim, or was that a one-off with both sides probably favouring attacking football now? Both sides' big strength is their forward line. Do you expect a shootout here on Saturday evening?
Yeah, well, I mean, you won't get a McKenna Cup scoreline. I guarantee you won't get that. But if you take it like, 116 scored, you were saying, look, I was scoring 19 points. We were always targeting, all county teams are trying to target over 20 points in games. And you think, if we scored 116 and you kept Donegal or Tyrone in these last 2 games to 18 points, you won that game. But it'll be in a completely different environment. You're going to have that local rivalry with Tyrone, as we talked about. There'll be a lot of hard hits in it. There'll be changes. Certainly not Tyrone side. I'd have thought there'll be a few adjustments to it. But where we're going to see this big open football, you got weather like we're having this week at the moment, and that carries on in the Saturday night, which I don't believe it'll last as long. This sort of storm's coming through, but there are all these different permutations that you bring into it. Interesting to see just how both defences cope, because we talked about how strong Armagh are from midfield up and the different variations you have with the two brothers swapping, O'Sheen swapping inside and coming out the midfield. You talk about the changes, with Grugan going inside, Soupy going inside, and then you have the Forker factor. Where do you play a Forker? You've touched on that, and everybody talks about that on it. And he's a type of player you could put him in goals, and you probably will still go up the field and score a couple of points for you in a match. It depends on where the need is, and the thing about Forker, in fairness, he would say to you, play me wherever is best for the team. It's not about me as an individual. That's the ideal type of player you want. He's the consummate professional when it comes to preparation on it. Fantastic player, and you can play him in any of the positions from 2 to 15. We played him predominantly in the backs because there was a lot of strength in the forward line, and we were getting his strength in the defensive end. But we've looked at his scoring ratio, and you would have seen this, Sean, as well, being part of the setup there with helping with the video and the analysis and stuff on it. You've seen Forker being picked at full-back and scoring maybe 2 points in virtually in all the games he would have played, and assisting quite a few of them. So he will be able to see just that his injury's okay. Is it just a soft tissue injury, or is it something more serious on it, just an impact? So we'll have to wait and see the outcome of that. If he plays, where will he play? Will he be able to play that same role? Will he be given an allocated marking job on these fantastic forwards that Tyrone have? So don't think it'll be as high scoring games that McKenna Cup one, as I said earlier on it, John, but I expect some good open football. Both like to kick the ball in quickly and get support lines in. Just be interested to see how the defence on both sides, because there's a lot of changes on both. And the big factor, which Paddy referred to there, it was like 5 minutes in the second half whenever Tyrone lost O'Neill, so they played the whole of that second half with the man down. And teams are getting better at utilising that extra man. Donegal used the extra man a bit better for the kickbacks and got the possessions on it. And I think Tyrone didn't score for like 20-minute period or something like that after they lost the man. So obviously both teams will want to keep everybody on the field for this one. Interesting to see, but looking forward to it.
And Aidan Forker, Paddy, we talk about him nearly every show because he always does something till get a mention, whether it's up kicking points or he's man marking. But this week, if he's fit to play, hopefully his injury isn't too bad. It was after he was took off last Sunday. Hopefully he'll be fit to play. He's probably the man going to pick up Conor McKenna, isn't he? He's probably going to go full back and pick up Conor McKenna, who probably didn't light the world of fire on Saturday evening against Donegal and will want to improve his own performance. So we're going to see Aidan playing full back, I would imagine, in on Conor McKenna, and hopefully still come up and kick a couple of points if he can.
Yeah, you'd expect so. Look, I think that's that's what's most likely now when you go into an Armagh, you go to an Armagh game, watch them on the television, is that Aidan will be picking up whoever's seen as the big danger man for the opposition. So look, that's what we'd expect. But I just wonder, Jim, I thought it was really interesting now what you were saying about Aidan, and the fact that he's so selfless, he's so selfless. And he's so team focused. And is that something you say you were involved there for about 3 years or so? Like, is that something you would have noticed developing in him over the course of that time? Because I know, like when he, a few years back, there was I don't think it's any. There was an issue with this. He was picking up a lot of cards over the course of games. But is that something sort of over that period of time that you've seen him gel into that sort of player, because at the minute, there's never a discipline issue. He's a brilliant tackler, brilliant worker, and as you say, his attitude's clearly just absolutely perfect, and it's a credit to him.
Yeah, he would be. Whenever I first came in, he would always be one of the leaders of the group. A lot of people say he'd be the automatic captain to lead this Armagh side, and Rory was a great captain when I was there as well. Soupy took over that, was a great captain. And Forker is the captain anyway, and a lot of people say it's the way he leads on the field. And it's not so much even nowadays about having the captain, it's about having leaders in the right areas that can drive the team forward. Ocean O'Neill is a young leader coming through as well, driving the team forward on. But if you take all those guys that I mentioned, the Grugans, the Forkers, the Campbells, the Ocean O'Neills, the Niall Grimleys, all those guys, really over this last 3 years, what I've seen with them, that their training regime is a self-imposed professionalism. It's not something that people think Kieran McGeeney has a big stick here and is beating these guys into making sure they eat the right diet and they have the right hydration and that they go to the gym 7 nights a week and that they train in the morning. And there's none of that. In fact, I was quite surprised, whenever I went at the start, that the players were the ones who were driving a lot of themselves. And not because Kieran wasn't doing it, he didn't need to do it because that's the way they were. And Forker would be, as I say, he'd be a constant professional in all that he does. He's really, and you've heard him speaking as well, even on your show, Sean, about leadership. It's something that interests him, and you see that on the field and what he does. And very rarely you'll see him bad mouthing the play. You'll see the encouragement and you'll see the instructional calling going on in the game. But his whole attitude, his attitude to training and as a person, and this is a big factor in a lot of the county players. It's not just so much what they're like on the football field, but what they're like off the field and what they do for the community and what they do within the team as well. And he'd be a leader on that one. So it's the modern day player. It's the way it is with a lot of the teams. You heard a lot of talk about the Dubs and how much the Dubs do outside of football and what they're like just outside of the football field in terms of training and working for each other. And Forker would be great at doing that. The big dilemma is always going to be, the big point of discussion, Sean, Paddy, is always going to be, where do you select him? And you're saying, will he be on McKenna? You put him on McKenna, then do you lose that factor again up front that you had? We had an additional attacking player from him because he was more focused when he was up there rather than man-marking from defence. As you said, the likes of Murphy, he took Murphy out of the game completely. Probably the only success we would have had from the man-marking end of it against Donegal. But he can do that with any player, and I've seen that in the 3 years I was there. No matter who was asked to man mark, he would do that and still contribute so much to the game. So we're interested to see if he's not in the defence, who would pick up the likes of McKenna. Because you're right, Sean. I think McKenna, he had a decent game, but compared to his standards, it was a poor game. He probably want to rectify that. He probably could have come away with maybe 4 or 5 more points, or he could have actually laid the ball off to players in better positions. He maybe got 2 or 3 more team points as well. So they're looking for improvements in that as well.
And this Tyrone forward line, Jim, that everybody's been sort of talking about, now that Mickey Hart's sort of gone, that they're going to play this big open kicking style and a big attacking game plan. The Tyrone forward line, it probably, would you say it's the best they've had on paper, certainly since the noughties, since the likes of O'Neill, Canavan and Mulligan left? That they have McKenna now, they've done Matty Donnelly up there, now Donaghy has come into it, McShane to come back. Is this the most dangerous Tyrone forward line since that noughties team?
I would say probably it's not far off. I mean, Donaghy looks like a great find, but that was one match, and he scored 10 points, but he scored 4 from play. I mean, the one with his right foot there outside of the boot at the end looks superb. It's the sort of thing that you see one of the Kerry players do, and you would be in all the national papers about, the great score that Clifford get, and then the one he got in the first half of the left foot, when he beat the man third inside, put it over. But I mean, in order to be that great player, he's a young player. I think he was the top scorer in Tyrone last year, so he's done it regularly for his club. Now the question will be he able to do it regularly for the county? And you consider, Donegal are tight defenders. They do have the sweeper back in. They do cover the D fairly well, but he was still able to get 4 from play. Was good with the frees as well. So that's a big find to them. McShane coming back in, and you have McShane McKenna, are they going to be the two inside forwards for them in the future? Where will, because McShane was the main target man, obviously, before he got his injury. So how does he fit back into that setup? You have Hart, who's played in the forwards as well in the defence. You have Donnelly, who played in all sort of different positions on it. He was relatively quiet on Sunday as well, or last weekend, whenever they played their match. So what's going to be the best permutation? You're probably one of the best left-foot footballers in McCorry, who's come on and, played in games, started in games, looked superb last year. Michael Liskey back in again. Say young Canavan looks like a great prospect, so it's a strong forward line, and as I said, 12 wides, that'll be probably one of their main video analysis points on it, that a lot of them were a lot of those wides were scores that really they should have got. They weren't under a lot of pressure. So they'll fight that, and even if they got half of those, would have been a different scoreline, obviously, but they didn't, and we'll see what happens next week. But for this game, obviously McShane probably won't be back, but for the championship, he's going to be a big addition. That is a strong forward line, as do Armagh have as well. So they're going to have to think about their defensive structure and how they can try and nullify that attack, because the threat of Shuby driving through there, created a wee bit of havoc within the Monaghan side. And I know there were talk as well that this Monaghan side had a lot of people missing, a lot of big players missing. Armagh had players missing as well. Ian Nugent, for example, fantastic footballer, to come back into that side as well. So there were players missing on both sides, but it's going to be an interesting battle of the defences to see who can curtail those two really good attacking setups on both sides.
Yeah, I suppose we're talking about the two attacking sides. Like there's a defensive side to it as well. That we're talking about the likes of Aidan Falker's going to probably man-mark Ryan Kennedy's going to man-mark James Morgan as well. On the other side, you have Ronan McNamee. He'll probably pick up whoever is, well, it'd be Campbell or O'Neill in full forward, and Hampsey's a man marker as well. But Paddy, I want to talk about the middle of the field and get your opinions on this. Is this an area Armagh can target? Because just reading the Tyrone team from last week, the half-back line of Michael Cassidy, Peter Hart, Michael O'Neill, midfield Frank Burns and Brian Kennedy, then half-forward line Paul Donaghy, Matty Donnelly and Conor Myler. It doesn't strike you as a big, massive, tall middle eight that Tyrone have, bar Kennedy probably. Donnelly's maybe 6 foot. The rest of them probably not giants around that middle of the field. While Armagh have the two O'Neills can come out and play there, Grimley, Charlie Oakes there. Is there an advantage there for Armagh that the height over Tyrone in the middle of the field, and in doing so can hopefully clean up there?
Yeah, it's funny. It's sort of rolling back the years. That was one of the sort of tropes, back at the start of the noughties, was that Tyrone were a much smaller team than Armagh were. It was probably something that was probably exaggerated a wee bit, to be honest. But it is very noticeable when you look at that Armagh team. The lads that were playing, the lads that were playing last Saturday, you have a lot of players that would have spent a lot of time in and around midfield. Obviously, the two lads that started midfield in Grimley and Rain, Kieran O'Hanlon would have played a bit of football around there. Charlie Oak the same. Certainly, Oisín O'Neill plays loads. Plays loads of football around the middle as well. And then of the fellas that came on, Ross McCullen, natural around there, and Jason Duffy's a tall man too. So yeah, look, we have size there. Probably even Rory Grugan's but maybe played midfield a bit at club level. So I know you tend to get that because the strongest players that end up on county teams will inevitably at club level you'll want to try to get them into the games. You'll play them around midfield. But yeah, look, definitely any potential advantage that you might have, Sean, you'll be looking to try and target and try and get some of those quick ball from kickouts and move on there and get the get the ball into our dangerous forwards before Tyrone have maybe got a chance to get set up with numbers in defence.
And Jim, if you were still involved, is that something maybe that you would be targeting, that you have a height advantage out around the middle, and maybe you can press up on the Tyrone kickouts and make them kick long, and sort of that helps play the game in Armagh's terms?
Yeah, well, it's probably the height advantage really is only going to be for restarts. And the modern game, you're in your introduction to that question, you weren't referring to midfield, you were referring to the middle eight. And it's all about, a middle eight now. I mean, the game's changed. Your 1 to 15 is for a programme and for jerseys now. Because players, again, not going back over it, but look at Forker, picked on 3 and look where he plays on it. But that middle eight on for the kick out end of it, and even if they're going big on it, a lot of the taller men can be nullified that wee bit in terms of how you set up for kick outs when they've been targeted to. I don't know how much height differential there is between two, but I'd be quite sure that the new management in Tyrone will be looking to nullify any effects on that and try and make sure for their kick outs, as they do with Morgan. Morgan's very good at directing the ball away from loaded sides, big men, mismatches, and finding men in space. And a lot of the kicks now are more to men in space, running into space rather than the big ball on top. Although having said that, with the mark, you can see when that is the option for the big ball. Even the big ball over the top now, you see for the half forwards coming, running on, is a ball running onto it rather than the ball to be caught. So I don't know that it'll be a big factor in the game. It'll be certainly something that they would need to take cognizance of, because if it's not dealt with and a team with height advantage that can move that ball quickly or get kick out marks and then move it quickly, will be an advantage.
And just to finish up then, lads, Jim, I just sort of want to get your opinion on Tyrone. Is there maybe a bit of pressure on them, as we've said? Like, they've got rid of Mickey Hart. The new men have come in, Logan and Dooher have come in, and it's expected to be this free-flowing attacking football. No team plays like that anymore. Like, Jim, there's, as you say, the numbers are for programmes and jerseys. There's no such thing as, 6 forwards staying up all the time. So is there a bit of pressure on Tyrone this year? Do you feel like that they have to deliver this great attacking forward line and supposedly this new style of play as well?
I think that this whole new style of play and the attacking play and the whole change the Tyrone's going to come about is more from the outside world, talking about them rather than what they'll probably be setting up for. I mean, you have 2 excellent coaches in Tyrone now. Logan and Dooher, they've played at the highest level, they've coached at the highest level, and they've been successful at doing both. So they'll not be going out to have this all-out attack and leaving defensively exposed. They will try and play attacking brand of football. But to be honest with you, I think Mickey Hart had an awful lot of undue criticism that he was being very much defensive and wasn't playing attacking football on it. Some of the football that they played even in Mickey's latter period was sublime football to watch on it. So, I mean, I wouldn't always take into account a lot of things that said with maybe some of the pundits. And again, I'm not a pundit, I'm a coach here coming onto your show on a one-off, so I suppose I could be excluded from that. Paddy would be a pundit, of course, but I wouldn't always take into account what a lot of them are saying, in the national papers and all about the style. But pressure, there's always pressure on coaches, no matter when it's your first year going in and you're in transition. I know Monaghan probably, and Aaron referred to it, that Monaghan are probably more in transition now, haven't been more established in previous years on it. And it was the first match, so I think people need to be careful just not to read a whole lot in the first matches, because a lot of things can happen within one game. I have seen and heard so many times, even within games, at halftime about that's the best football I've seen Armagh playing or I've seen Tyrone playing, and they're going to go on and win the Ulster this year, and they go out the second half and have a nightmare. Even in that Donegal game last year that Paddy was referring to, there was a 10-minute period where that game was lost. Just after that water break, it was 5-3, 5-2 at the water break, and in a short period of time that game just turned. But everybody will have their view about where teams are at after that first game last week on it. I'd prefer to see where everybody is after game 3, because at the stage the permutations could be that you have 3 teams on 4 points if everybody beats each other, and Tyrone have to win this one obviously to be in that position, so they'll be coming hard for that. But it's in the athletic grounds. Just by luck, the year that I leave, they get a home game in the championship, They get all their games, no away games. That game, last one was in Fermanagh, and the 2 home games. So the game that I'm not there, with no travelling, with home game, albeit without spectators, of course. But I think it's certainly nice to have Tyrone in the athletic grounds for that game as well, and look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, it's definitely one to look forward to, and hopefully Armagh can put in a big performance and hopefully get the win. The Armagh hurlers are also out this weekend. They're playing Sligo in Sligo on Saturday at 2:00, and there's going to be a stream for that game, so keep an eye out on our social media pages. We'll be sharing that. And the Armagh ladies are also out there against Tyrone on Sunday at 2:00, and there'll be a stream for it as well. And keep an eye out. We'll be sharing that stream to watch it live. So thanks very much for coming on, boys, and talking us through the rivalry, the game, the attack and play, and hopefully we'll get an Armagh win at the weekend.